Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Digital Workplace, where we are doing some reviews of digital workplace platforms. I got my favorite guests in the house today. We got Vonda Page. She is joining us from Radical Change, LLC. And we got Vijay Anand coming to us from the Startup Center. How are you both doing today?
I am doing great. I'm so happy to be here. Excited to do another episode.
Yep, very much so. Thank you for having us, Neil.
Anytime. You guys are always welcome. So today we have a new tool that's fairly recent. It launched decently recently called Qatalog, spelled with a Q, as the kids do these days. So Qatalog advertises itself as a work hub. I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to look at this a little bit here. So actually, I wanted to start on this page because this is how I got in touch with Qatalog and learned about them for the first time, was language.work. They talk about how to work differently, and it's all stuff that I geek out on, talking about new ways of working, moving from legacy to a new way, people first, trust, flexibility, focus, moving away from these things. So I got in touch with them and learned about the product and saw, wow, this is a cool thing that's there. If we go to their homepage, Qatalog talks about all these things, no more, why, what are they working on, etc. Try the Work Hub for modern teams. So Work Hub is the name of what they're talking about. Just as a reminder, when we say digital workplace, we're usually talking about something where you can manage your work, like work management that comes across in multiple forms, whether it be projects or processes or different things, but then also some free form collaboration as well that can come in. So it definitely seemed like it was going to fit for all that, and looks pretty good. Just a quick note on the product and plans that are there. It has a free forever plan with up to 10 people. So it's really, they don't limit the features necessarily. It's just if you want to get over 10 people, then it bumps up to $9 per person per month, which we can revisit at the end if we feel like that's a worthwhile price. Otherwise, I thought, it pitches a good idea about having a homepage, having a work hub. I was pretty excited to start it off. Any other first impression you guys had before you actually tried it?
So my first impression was that it seemed that they definitely have, the pulse of the end user in mind, right? And thinking really thoughtfully about how people work and, how to help enhance that. So that was kind of my original thought. And then I guess the other one was really around, how did they come to really thinking through, which sets of tools would be part of, part of that integration and able to work with it.
Cool. Vijay?
Yeah, this is a product that I was really, really excited to try my hands on. I think the design is brilliant. It is very 2021 and very hip and what is in current trend with most work tools, and where you basically start seeing enterprise apps imitating what a lot of the social apps are starting to look like. The name was a little bit confusing. I was trying to figure out, where does, first of all, I think when you're telling people that you're using a tool called Qatalog, the first impression that an assumption that they're going to get is that it starts with a C. And I was also trying to figure out, where does the word catalog and the background of it come into something which is a work management tool. So there was a little bit of confusion on that, but I think very, very excited about trying out this.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. It definitely had a lot of promise and still does as I look at it. And Vonda, I think you said it best. It's solving the right problem for sure. It's like attacking the thing that everyone's dealing with. How do we have all these tools? How do we bring them in some kind of elegant way without being too simplistic? I think is the challenge that they're trying to solve. So let's jump in. We have our own account here. So this is the first thing that you see when you jump up. It's just a bunch of tiles that you can customize for whatever you want to do. So I added a few of my own. I just put in one with Google Calendar. So it kind of shows you what's coming up for that day, what you need to talk through. This is where I manage my own tasks, just a link that's here. So I could put links here. You could also put links to lots of other things, shortcuts, things within Qatalog. Google Drive shortcuts. Obviously, integrations is key for a tool like this. So Asana, things that would be there, linking to things in Dropbox, Jira, Trello. Lots of different things you can add in here, which the more I see it, the more common something like this is. A very customizable homepage where you can put things through here. You also have a way to search through all these items and basically everything in that you've linked in. So I can even search through my Google Drive in this. Did you guys experiment around with this homepage at all?
Yeah, I did. And so actually, when I was doing it, I was thinking about, okay, so from the standpoint of, being a entrepreneur, right? And where I have team members, but we're not all working on the same thing, right? Because I have virtual assistants and other people. So I think for me, at the home screen, my first thought was, okay, so if my appointments and things, right, are in Google, even if I have other workflows, in Trello and some other things, really trying to think through what would make sense for me on my, home screen. But the thought that kept coming up for me is, what is the size of the teams, right? That people are going to be doing it in actuality, right? So when it comes to doing your work every day and you're looking at, okay, I'm trying to collaborate with, an engineer or product managers or other team members, what are the different sizes and which tools and applications are your closest collaborators using? So that was a thing that came up for me kind of at the home page, like when I was thinking about how would I want to tell a team or a person to get started.
Yeah, good point. Vijay, did you experiment with this one?
This, I think, was very nicely done. They kind of left it to the individual to decide how to prioritize what is important to them, which I thought was great compared to a lot of tools where they assume, the information that makes sense for you. When we were putting together this dashboard for myself, I kind of quickly realized that this is not an organizational dashboard, neither is it a team dashboard. And I think that's when the design thinking behind this product kind of came apart, where I realized that this is more built around the individual and what are the kind of work that they're doing versus what's happening as a team or what's happening as an organization. So yeah, I think it makes sense to basically be to have the first dashboard or screen that you're going to see when you log into work, saying that, okay, these are the things that are happening. These are the events that are up for the day, and maybe a little bit of activity in terms of what the rest of the teammates have been doing in terms of maybe working on some collaborative tasks.
Yep.
So real quick, so to your point, Vijay, I'm wondering how did you think about it from the standpoint of like distributed teams or teams that are of different sizes? So for example, right, I was thinking of if it was a team for under 50 people, right, you probably don't have. You have different groups of people working on the same projects, right? But they're doing it probably in little clusters. So to your point, right, this I would be using it from my individual end, but not necessarily as a view into how my colleagues would be using it. What were your thoughts about that part?
I think that's where a little bit of the promise that I had earlier about this product kind of starts breaking down. Because what it's essentially saying is that similar to bring your own devices, you're bringing your own tools into the organization, right? So you could be a person who's storing all your files in Google Drive. So you link it up here, or maybe you're a person who's using a Dropbox account. So you can kind of link all of those things and get your work done. But it doesn't kind of, the design and the intent of the tool does not seem to be about the team gets their work done. I think there is a little bit of effort going towards that side in terms of the way that they're trying to think about goals and projects, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But this seemed to be more centered around the individual contributor, so to speak, rather than what's happening with the team. Because if we ask each of the team members to basically say, bring your own tools, I know that there's going to be a fight within my own team where there are people who swear by Trello and there are people who basically are okay with Asana or Asana. I think there would be a debate as to how to pronounce it in the first place. So when people start using their own tools, I think this what we call as contextual collaboration starts breaking down. I don't think this tool is going to be able to pull it off.
I think that question of how big is your team and who is this right for, I think we're going to keep revisiting that throughout as we look at different pieces. My initial reaction is this works great if I have about 10 people on a team. And I think it would be useful that gives people a little bit of freedom to do their own thing and bring it in, but still have some collaboration. Once it gets beyond that, it's a little bit tough for me to see how things work. And I don't know, I haven't experimented with like multiple teams using this, multiple sets of small teams. It may be good, but I don't really have a firm idea. Vonda, did you have like an initial reaction of team sizes that would be optimal for this?
I did. And it's funny because I first thought that like I was thinking about like a really agile team first, right? I thought a really agile team that's, like in a rhythm and in a groove, right? And even if they are onboarding either, right, new projects at the end of a sprint, or if they're working, one project in multiple sprints, I was imagining 4-8 people working closely together, everything in one place. I was envisioning that. Yeah. But every time I think through, whether this would be a team or a group within, a small company, or a particular team or group, even in a mid-sized to larger company, I come back to what are the tools that they're using now, and where were those pain points that they feel that they need a hub to put certain tools in there. And it was funny, Vijay, as you were talking about Asana versus, Trello or what people like, I was thinking about those diehard Slack people, right? That live and die by Slack all day, that don't come out of Slack, right? They code and they do everything and everything. So once again, what's the pain point that a particular organization is having at the time when they say, hey, we want to evaluate, right, some new digital capabilities? So that's the one piece that goes through my head. But I think an agile team that is definitely in a rhythm and working together, when they are putting, adding, new levels of complexity, right, new phases of work, I think this would be amazing for that. But again, I think they would need to be coming to the table with some concern about, hey, we're not able to wrap our minds around it. Because, once again, I always have my change leadership hat on, and change. And with that perspective is the pain of change, right? For people, it can't be worse than the pain that they're already going through.
Yep. Well said, as always. And I totally agree. Like if you're already sold out to using one tool or maybe even two tools, jumping back and forth between them, and you already have a rhythm, like you're not going to find this to be super helpful. I would say if you're struggling because you have 6 or 7 right now that you're trying to work at, and you don't intend to get rid of any of those, then I see, okay, yeah, we can have like a central hub where we can bring everything together. But if you don't already have that pain point, it's hard to see the reason for this one.
Yeah. One of the things that I would basically say, that when you're building a work management hub or a work management tool, as it's basically coined as a phrase, how do you manage asynchronous and synchronous communication becomes very important. And that was an answer that I really did not get a very clear cut. How are the creators thinking about it from this platform perspective? That was not really very obvious to me.
Yeah, everything here, there's no chat feature. So everything here would be asynchronous, I would assume, as they go through things. They have integrations with Slack, but not really like, you can't bring Slack here. You can push notifications out into Slack to let you know when something happens here.
Yeah, so and in a sense that breaks it, because if you do integrate Slack here, and when you start a conversation, it's going to throw you back to Slack to basically start the conversation. What's the reason to basically come here? Like Wanda said, if there are people living and breathing in Slack and they don't want to open any other window, how are they going to deal with that? And I think Slack also has a fairly large, robust ecosystem of integrations already built up. that almost all of the integrations that Qatalog has, they basically have it there as well. So I think in some sense, this is a visual version of what Slack is. But there are still some parts, in terms of the contextual collaboration part that is missing.
Cool. Well, let's look at a little more. We've been talking a lot, haven't really shown much. I'm going to start at the bottom here. Obviously, just kind of your profile and preferences. I will say, like, there's notifications here. Both Vijay and I noticed that we didn't actually get notifications when other people were responding and saying things, but it just made it be a bug that's going on. The pulse here means like all the things that have happened. So it's like everything that goes on. Vijay, you had a few thoughts on this thing.
Well, actually, that's a brilliant feature that I've kind of noticed that with most of the digital workplace tools that you have, when you're working all by yourself, half the time you don't know, like, this is a bit that people often have told me that they miss in an office, because when you're in an office, the sales team closes a sale, so they probably have a bell or some sort of way to kind of notify that there is movement happening. There are people getting in and out of meeting rooms, so that some decisions are being made. So you kind of miss that whole activity and that the ambience that comes from working in an office. And I think this Pulse feature kind of tries to imitate that. Having a sense of like hey, people are working on this. This project is actually starting to move. So that actually would be very interesting, and I think that shows a lot of promise. I do think about like, if there is 100 people organization and people are opening projects and updating it and things like that, how quickly is it going to get a little bit overwhelming and starting to look like a Facebook feed? I think that is a little bit of concern, but I think that's a brilliant feature baked in there. It has promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was imagining it. The thing it reminded me of was, how when you go to in the office, different coffee areas or like a break room, and there might be a LCD that has like different things about, to your point, right, Vijay, about projects that have happened or whatever. So it did that, but because it was called Pulse, to me, that it didn't make me think it was going to be, kind of like a bulletin board announcement kind of thing till I started clicking around. So, but I do think, especially now, right, when so many of us are not in the office, it's good to be able to see something. But at the same time, right, to the point before about not having that like persistent chat, right, where you can consistently engage, right, that is definitely one of the downfalls, right, and that's where your Slack users would be like, no, right? It's no reason to ever come off of Slack, because here I can't even send you a chat.
Yep. All right, let's jump into the actual features they have here. So they've broken it down to projects, goals, workflows, and this is like a team feature. So if I click here, this is the team that we have here. This is the people that are in it. If I click teams, I can make, like we call this one, the review team that's there. I think most of these teams come up later as you're actually planning out some of these things that happen in here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I click on review team. Well, I guess, yeah, in a team setting, now it's going to give you, this is where you start to see some of the breadth of what they're trying to cover here. At the top, nicely placed, you see the overview, which again, is just the Pulse activity. You could link some resources here. So if you got like a Notion page, you want to say, and I like this a lot because in a lot of other products I see, there's no central place for these, what we call like durable forms of communication, stuff that you don't want to get lost in this scrolling Pulse thing that goes through. You want them to be accessible all the time. Probably some of your ground rules, key things about people, or key reminders that need to be there, or if you have other things that are there. So I mean, I like this. I didn't put anything here right now, but it does seem that having this as a central piece is nice. Outside of overview, then it breaks it down within the team. You have then projects, goals, resources, threads. I guess resources would probably show the same thing as before if I added it. That would be there. So let's start with projects. So this is where you're supposed to be able to add a project. I haven't done one for this one, so let's just do that, see what happens. So I assume this is supposed to be a project management tool of some kind. I can add a team, which it's nice to be able to add different teams, I guess, to the project as soon as you start it up. So let's just say we're doing this. Let's create milestones, invite people, and do show, something like that. If I put these in, like, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly who would love using this as a project management tool. Add Vonda in just for now. And maybe this is it. Like, you got to bring in your Asana tools that come in there. But again, it's just going to be a shortcut that leads to that Asana project. When I'm here, now I'm in the project, this is basically all I have. I have 2 milestones, invite people to the show, and I update it, whether or not I did it or not. It can be at risk, or I can say it's done. So it's there, I guess. This is most of what you need for a project. No, I mean, I wouldn't say it's most of what you need, but it's the bare essentials of it. What do you guys think about the project tool?
My first thought was, who's going to use it?
Not me.
That was my first thought, right? Because I always have like that hat on, right? I can't. It's funny. I try to think about, like, because whenever I'm doing this, and I was looking at another tool over the weekend too, and I try to take myself out of my Vonda, right, person, and I try to put myself in a generic user, and then I start saying, okay, well, what if I was an engineer? Oh, what if I was a project manager? Like, different roles. And for this one, right, unless I was onboarding a new team onto this, right, and everybody is coming onto the company or onto the team, I just really struggle to imagine somebody going into another tool to then try to assign projects.
Yep. It almost reaches that point where it's like, if it's going to be this basic, you should just fully integrate it and say, hey, use some other tool that's more ready for a real work project. I don't know, Vijay, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so whenever I think project management, I think your biggest competition is Google Spreadsheets. Because that's what people are going to start from, right? And people are going to create multiple sheets, and like the kind of things that you can do with an Excel sheet with macros and a whole bunch of validation and alerts. Like, there is a lot that you can do with just that. And I think that's the lowest common denominator, right? Anybody can basically get on board, and if you structure it right, I think it is pretty reasonable. But there are also very specific tools like Trello, for example, which do a great job of project management. So I think when you're talking about small teams, and I'm presuming that these are high performance teams, they are not going to go with something like this. And I think this is still very, very early. One of the things that I'm trying, and I was trying really hard to find with Qatalog, was that what is that one feature that it does brilliantly? This is not it.
Yeah, I think that's a core question for me, as we'll go through the rest of it too in a second. But I mean, these are the main components. It's projects, it's goals. So just briefly, this is where you're going to set some kind of OKR or some kind of goal that's there, which is equally as simplistic. It's just saying, hey, I have a goal. Here's my update, and I just put that information in. Very, very simple. Workflows. So this is supposed to be like automated workflows that's there. Even this was like super duper simplistic, I would say, when it comes to setting up these workflows as it goes through. And it was a little bit confusing as well to know what it would look like. And then I guess the other core feature would be these chat threads, if we can go there. I mean, threads and posts, I don't know exactly the difference between the two. It wasn't very clear. But like, okay, here's some conversations we're having that goes through. I mean, this is, I guess this was the only feature that was like on par perhaps with what you could get somewhere else. But definitely goal management, project management, workflow management. This is like maybe like 10 to 20% of what you could get with a tool that actually did this well. So I don't know, Vijay, what the core feature, I'm not sure.
I can see that this threads thing could get very, very confusing in a larger organization. Like, how many times have you seen the same thing being discussed in different groups, over and over and over again? So having threads within a project team was probably not the best thing to do. I would go back to contextual collaboration, right? If there is a conversation happening, do it on the basis of a project or a task for which it's related to. Otherwise, move it to the public thing. There is a whole bunch of stuff that was actually going in the team's threads, where a lot of this content that is getting created basically just going to find itself abandoned and orphaned inside the organization. Like knowledge management is a whole behemoth all by itself. And one of the things that this tool does not take into factor is that people come and go. And when people go, what are the resources that they're leaving behind? What are the resources that they're going to pull out as they go along? And how is the team still going to continue to focus? Because when they basically start talking about adding resources, it's all coming out of personal repositories. So when they unplug all of those things, what happens to the projects?
You know, Vijay, it's so funny because one of my biggest things that last night, as I was kind of putting down like my key things that I definitely wanted to bring up today, the one thing that really struck me was the thought around technical debt just kept on coming up in my mind. So just now, right, when you're talking about that people leave, and even back to like the earlier part of our conversation when I was saying even that for me, if I'm a new company and I said, okay, I'm going to be hiring 12 people all at once or 8 people all at one time, and everybody's going to start on the same day, then I think this is great, right? Because then you are starting from the same point, right? And you're saying, okay, as a team, this is what we're going to all be using, right? But when you are talking about bringing in tools, right, into an organization that's already using tools, you already have things that you're not using anyway, right? Because if you're looking across your entire landscape, right, of what you have maybe 70% of people are using Slack. Maybe 30% of people are meeting over Zoom. Maybe the other 40% of people are doing their video conferences over Slack, right? So it depends. So you're building up, right? Every time you bring in a new tool, a new application, you're building up tech debt, right? And to Vijay's point, whether you're talking about when people leave an organization or even leave a team or a group or a project, right? What are you doing with all of those assets? Do you have somebody even looking at, all of that and keeping track of it, right? For future use, or looking at what things are, need to be archived for legal reasons, which things, so there's so much that goes into onboarding and bringing additional tools. And I think one of the things that I think in this, digital work environment, in this cloud and hybrid environment, people are forgetting about tech debt, right? Because maybe they're not imagining, big old closets with, computers in them anymore, right? And a bunch of keyboards and stuff. People aren't thinking, but you still have tech debt, right? And so that's another thing that came up for me around this and around who would use it, and then the efficacy, right, going forward for organizations.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, I don't know, like you have to ask, like, what is it that why are we adding in this debt, this additional resource, and what are we going to do if we don't need it? And I don't see yet like a compelling reason why I would want to take on this debt. Like, it's one thing if you're bringing me a tool that does one thing really well, everything else is kind of subpar. It's like, okay, maybe I'm willing to make that risk. But here, I mean, as we were talking, like the best thing it did was the homepage, which is pretty simple. Like, it's just that dashboard. And if that's really what people need, that's great. But this is not worth it to me to bring on a whole new realm of people. I would rather just kind of find a simpler way to string together some of the other tools I'm using.
So to be fair, I think there are a lot of really good ideas here. Like the Pulse thing is good. I think I was very excited to see a work hub basically having goals integrated from day one. They thought about projects, and I think they also thought about organizational clustering versus team clustering. So I think there are a lot of good ideas here. But I think like we talked about in the last video that we were having, you need to take one core concept and execute it really, really well. And I think that's going to matter a lot, especially when you're people are basically looking at building on top of you to build a high performance team. Right now, there are 7 different modules or 8 different modules, all of them kind of very, very early, still quite a bit far away from being mature.
What do you guys think? What does Qatalog look like a year from now? What do you think?
The first thing that comes to my mind is if they could actually, and maybe they have it, and I did look at some of the articles, and some of their other stuff, but I couldn't necessarily find. One thing I think that would be really good is if they could actually paint the picture of the best case scenarios, right? Where bringing on Qatalog would add value. I think that would be a game changer. So for example, right, even an icon or something on the side that was like something that made you ask the question of what is it that you're missing, that answers how Qatalog can fill that, right? So whether it's what the pain point is or what's missing or what's your struggle when it comes to, right, looking at your different, applications and how you work together, they haven't helped to bring that to a clear enough light, right? That makes me say, yes, this is who I would recommend it to specifically, right? Whether it's size of organization, type of work, distributed, teams, whatever. They need to give a little more around who is this going to help.
Yeah. Vijay, what about you? What do you think Qatalog looks like a year from now?
It's definitely beautifully designed, and I think they have that very clean thinking about this whole approach from a fresh perspective going on. I'm thinking that they'll probably add a lot more real-time communication into it, because that seems to be like a gap that is there right now. And by saying that, hey, you need to switch to Slack to basically do those conversations and come back here, I think you're essentially saying that you need to pay about $9 for Slack, and you also need to pay $9 for me. And I think you're essentially starting to pay for two different tools. That also brings me to the larger discussion. If this is going to be a hub which basically connects a whole bunch of tools, from an organizational standpoint, how are you basically making things a little bit more cost effective? The value that you're providing, is it really as good as a project management tool like Trello or a communications tool like Slack? How are people going to see the value for it? Especially if it's a 100-people team, it's $900 to $1,000 every month going out on this. And I think companies are spending a lot more money on this, SaaS products all over the place, right? So where is the whole market shrinking exercise that is happening? Does it actually have enough of a value proposition in this layer that they're building for people to justify spending that money? Is something that I'm thinking about. I'm also, one of the questions that I'm not able to answer is that I envisage that if we all have to work digitally and have to come together and work, some of the things that are not happening well in the offline world have to happen better in the online world. Like, for example, the way that we do work appraisals are horrible right now because it's just a popularity contest as to whether your manager really likes you. But the reason why an organization would want to switch to a work management tool or a digital workplace is because the kind of work that you do becomes transparent, and you can quantify the productivity levels of individuals as well as teams, and also help achieve the larger organizational goals. So for that to happen, you need to have an extremely well integrated environment, or the platform should be extremely well integrated. It's able to say that this is the contribution of that person in terms of planning, thinking about, strategizing, and executing it, right? And to be able to track it so that overall the system starts telling you who are the most productive folks who are there in the organization. The fact that you are right now dependent on integrate all the APIs of all of these individual tools, which have no incentive to give you complete control over everything that they can do potentially, is going to be limiting in terms of achieving those kind of overarching themes that you want in a digital workplace.
Yeah. I see the advantage and the lane that Qatalog has here is that very few other tools are willing to take such a broad approach to everything that's required for work. And the one thing I feel like they've done really well is to say these are the core elements of a great team. It is goals, which, like you said, most tools do not have anything for goal management. So that's cool to see here. It is projects. You're going to have a lot of projects that go on that are just a little bit more ad hoc, or plan it, do it once, and then do something new. It is going to have more automated workflows that are more repetitive things that happen all the time. You see some tools, they have some options here for these resources, knowledge management. That's very essential. The posts and the threads. Yeah, I think if you take all those things together, they are trying to solve like the full scope of what modern teams deal with. And I don't see a lot of other tools trying to do all that. Now, where they go from this is I don't see them being able to bring their projects tool up to a sophistication that can be at least on par with Trello. I think they could, but it would take a lot of work. Same with workflows. It's going to take a lot of work to get it up to a level of like modest sophistication. Goal management too, take a lot of work. So you're talking about several different areas where they're trying to push forward. But if they can really stick with this idea of like you need all these things together and no one else is helping you think through that holistically, and they want to push deeper into these APIs and say, okay, yeah, you're using Trello or Asana for all of your project management, but how is that data coming into your goal management, or how are you being able to bring those things into a different part of it? So maybe there's a better play just to help companies, and like you said, Vonda, like be very clear, like this is the tool to help you zoom out and see everything all at once and how it connects with each other, unlike other tools that are there.
Yeah, and the thing too is, right, the other thing that would be really beneficial for them, right, as they are trying to help people to, adopt and understand, hey, this is why this is really good, is for them to think about it from that change leadership, that change management perspective. So companies, people, whether you are, a company with 5 people or a company with 5,000, people already have their structures and their processes and the way that they work. If you want to change that, and if you want to help people adopt a new tool, even if you think that tool is going to, greatly enhance the experience at work and greatly, help with visibility into goals and projects, you still have to have some sort of structured approach to help people, onboard and adopt, right, to actually do a digital transformation from, one set of way of working to another. And that, to me, is going to be a key point, right, in Qatalog, really being able to demonstrate, right, the power and the promise behind what they're offering.
Yep. Excellent. Anything else in the product you guys wanted to look at a little deeper? Kind of got me. I did not use, they sent me a lot of emails and have all these tools to set up Qatalog. I intentionally did not do that just to see if I could figure it out on my own. So I think this is probably good, and they do a nice job with helping people onboard. So that's probably a good strength of theirs.
They're definitely thinking about the bigger picture. I think with what they're doing with language.work and the emails that they're sending, I look at it and I kind of get a sense that they're trying to solve the larger work problem compared to just telling you that, hey, I'm giving you a tool. One of the feedback that I would also kind of is probably helpful for pretty much most of the companies that are building digital workplace tools is that, like Wanda was basically saying, we are going to have an issue with people coming into companies, doing all the work, and then leaving, and people creating too many groups than what is required. Duplicating projects all over the place, duplicating threads. So I think there is this new, job title that's basically getting formed, which is the digital workplace officer. I think DW, digital workplace tools, or even work management tools like these have to have a provision or a profile for digital workplace officers to kind of come in and clean up some of these things. So I think it's important for, how do you equip and enable a digital workplace officer to kind of keep all of these things in check? I think that's very much going to be a needed feature in all of these tools as well.
Yep.
Agree. I think they need to get the architects on board, right, from different companies, right, and really start to have the architect, you know, understand what this does. Because I mean, I just, as you were talking, Vijay, I just started getting these warm memories of some just really great architects that I've worked with, you know, over the years, that would be like, hey, wait a minute, right? Like, what are you trying to do here? And so, yeah, to your point, I think I've been thinking about that for a while, right? Like, what would that role look like, right? So what would your digital workplace officer, what would that look like, right? And how would they partner or work with the architect, you know, to really have that broad look across the entire technical landscape, right? And then say, what are the pain points, and, you know, put a plan together, not only to bring it in, but then to manage it and offboard or retire other things that aren't necessary.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree that Qatalog is there for the big picture folks. Like it would definitely resonate with those people to see like, oh, this is bigger. Because I mean, something like Slack, like they're trying to build integrations into every tool imaginable so you can stay in Slack forever. But Slack will never solve the big picture because it's a chat tool, and it's always going to be a chat tool, and they're not going to be able to change that interface that they have. And so starting with something fresh, a fresh approach to, hey, this is the big picture, this is how we're going to do things. That's a great vision. I wish them the best. I hope they pull it off. It's not there yet. It's not like bringing me in, but I'm excited about it. Excellent. Well, cool. As always, Vonda, Vijay, thanks for your time and coming on and sharing everything with us. Let me stop this one. You guys are the best. Love dissecting these tools with you, and we look forward to chatting about the next one.
Yeah, talk with you soon. This was great. Yeah, I think this is good. I think Qatalog, like you said, it definitely has some good potential. And, you know, hey, let's check back in on it right next year.
Sounds great. All right. See you all.
Bye.